And with that, another warrior mode is upon us. I want to welcome all of you, ladies, gentlemen, any younger people as well, who are tuning in this Sunday to our fine little podcast that we have here, myself and my good friend, the spiritual warrior, Bill Bean. And we have got an absolute barnstormer of an edition of Warrior Mode lined up for all of you. And for once, and thankfully, from my point of view, you don't come here to listen to me today. I hand over the reins to my good friend Bill Bean. How you doing, brother?
Great, my brother. It's always a pleasure, and it's always so great for us to be able to do this every Sunday, Kev. I can't believe it. Is this the 10th or the 11th one now?
11th, Bill. I know, 11th already.
Wow.
And I want to thank you because we didn't plan on doing this together. You'd started out yourself, and I'd seen you were having techie problems. I thought I'd just offer you some help, and never imagined we would embark on this additional kind of information to what we already do once a month anyway. But I've really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I get a lot of positive feedback from this weekly show, as I imagine you do as well, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. People love it. People look forward to it. And like you said, it was not planned, but God had the plan for it. And we praise Him for it. And here we are, and we'll keep moving forward in it. So it is a blessing. And yes, many people are tuning in, and many people are commenting, sending me messages saying how much they really enjoy the show.
And for anyone who may tune in late or you want to check out the rest of the episodes and you've looked at my channel and thought, where's Bill? We upload the full show over on Bill's YouTube channel, and I'll give out the link of that as this show progresses. And you can find all of the episodes on there. And Bill, he comes on my show. He goes on Coast to Coast, regularly. And he also often, well, maybe often's going a bit too far, but he frequents the silver screen, shall we say, from time to time. And Bill, this week, I thoroughly enjoyed seeing you in an episode that we can finally talk about of Ghost Nation. And this was the Fonty Flora property, right?
Yeah, what a strange place, Kev. And thank you so much for watching. And hello to Anne, your wonderful lady, and thank her as well. I know that both of you watched it, and we got to say hi to your mom, Pearl, also, and I'm sure she watched it too. So it was, like you and I talked off air, very, very strange place, and I felt a very heavy presence of evil just coming into the area nearby to the Fonty Flora plantation.
And I must admit, when I watched the program, you talk about your stereotypical kind of haunted house. This thing had it all. It was standalone. It looked like it was a kind of remote area.
Very remote, yeah.
Very much still in the style of the time period that it comes from, right? It looked rather oldie worldy to me. It hasn't changed much from back in the day when this was a working cotton plantation, I believe, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, again, just going to I recall driving, I was staying at a hotel about 25, 30 minutes away from the location. It was a little town, Main Street, USA. It was a nice little town in Blair, South Carolina. So I recalled leaving the hotel, and I'm in my rent-a-car driving to the Fonty Flora. And I went past it. I was to make a left and go down this dirt driveway to the plantation, to the mansion there. And I went past it. I went past it several miles. And boy, just going through that place, Kev, the entire area, it just felt very heavy. I felt a strong presence of evil. Out in the middle of nowhere, forest and swamplands. It's very close to the Sumter National Forest. And so I rode probably, I want to say 2.5, 3 miles past that driveway, and then turned back and came back down and went down. Just wanted to get a real authentic feel for the area, not an initial feel. I wanted to really feel what was going on. And sure enough, the more time I spent in the area, the more confirmation I was getting from God in my spirit that evil was absolutely present. And then I recall, going down the long driveway and met up with the star of the show, Jason Halls, first. And it was Jason himself who contacted me personally to come. He wanted to check my availability, and I was busy, but I adjusted my schedule to go down there. He said, "Bill, can you please, come down here? We have a situation. We think that this is a demonic situation." So it was Jason himself who personally contacted me, and then he brought in some producers from the show that we started to have a dialogue, and then I got my business manager, Krista Keller, involved in putting this whole thing together. And next thing you know, I was on a plane flying down there to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I had to get a rent a car and drive nearly 2 hours from Charlotte Airport into this area of Blair, South Carolina.
And we were just taking a look at the house there as you were talking. Like I say, very stereotypically haunted looking building. And Jason Hawes, he's somebody that I've known, I've followed for some time. And you've worked with him a couple of times now. And you've told me, I mean, they're very, very professional guys, right? And
Yeah.
I know a lot of paranormal investigators watch this show. We've got your friend, Stephen Hodgson. He's tuned in right now. And we've also got our
Nice.
friend Jason. Yeah, we've got Jason, First Paranormal.
All right. Hi, Jason.
Yeah, so I mean, what was your take on the guys? Very professional, know what they're doing when it comes to the whole kind of going in, investigating, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that, they knew what they were doing, and they certainly had, which, Kev, I don't deal with any equipment. Look, my power is from God, so I don't bring any type of meters or anything else. It is just, I come with the guns blazing by the power of God working through me. But they did have quite a bit of equipment. It was a large production crew. And I have to say, they were all top notch. They treated me with a great deal of respect. And when it was time to shoot, the first thing, they have to put you on your marks and all that kind of stuff. And so they have me facing Jason and Steve Gonzalez and another really good guy.
Oh, I like Steve. Yeah, always liked him.
Yeah, and Dave and Sherry, they were all very, very good people. And so the scene is between the three of us, and it's just a greeting scene. And after that, the director says to Jason, "Well, what do you want to do from here? How do you want?" He says, "Look, we're out of this now. You guys just follow Bill." And they did. There was probably 7 camera guys, and they followed me from room to room in every part of that mansion. And it was not a 1, 2, 3 thing, that's for sure. But I will give them tremendous props that they seemed to be able to flow with me. And I did. I waited a little bit, but it wasn't like waiting 5 minutes between scenes or anything like that. They just kind of melded around me, per se, and I was able to move from room to room. And I gave it a little pause to give them a chance to get set up for the next room. But they did an outstanding job, and it didn't disrupt what I was doing. Had it disrupted what I was doing as a man of God and an agent for God, I would have said, "Look, this isn't going to work," because I can't. I'm there. My main purpose for being there was to rid that home and area and the homeowner from this evil that had probably been there for a long, long time. And so had the production aspect of it gotten in the way, then I would have stopped everything and said, "No, this is not authentic. It's not going to work." I've had issues like that in the past with other shoots, and if it doesn't work, then it's a waste of everybody's time. But they were great. They did a fantastic job. It all flowed great, and they followed me everywhere I went. And the most important thing is that God worked through me to rid, again, the home, the property, and the homeowner from whatever evil forces were there, which I believe were there for quite a while. And I've since heard that the man has peace now, and there's been peace to the home and hopefully the property as well.
That's the real kind of important part of all of this. Great to see you on telly, but at the heart of all of these paranormal investigations, something that gets lost, I think, when it comes to the TV guys, and I'm not talking about, Ghost Nation here. I mean more generally. There's real people that live in these properties, and that really hit home to me listening to that homeowner in that episode, Bill. And it made me think of all the people that you travel around, in your country, and all of these people pushed to the point where they're having to seek help. And we talk about these dark forces all of the time, and I think it's really great that you can come away and we do have that update that this really did help the homeowner, because we're living in a time right now away from all of the TV stuff, the infotainment, and everything else. Real people in real houses are experiencing the paranormal off the charts, Bill. And I hope that they can maybe watch something like that, and it might prompt them to either, contact yourself, or at least they'll know that there's an option. There are people out there that they can go to, right?
Yeah, and Kev, that's the blessing in this whole thing. I don't watch paranormal shows. I live that stuff as an agent for God, a warrior for God, man of God. So I don't watch those shows. I'm not entertained by them. However, the blessing in it, you hit the nail on the head. I can't tell you how many times someone has contacted me for help that said, yeah, I just saw you on a haunting or saw you on this program, that program, and I was at the end of my rope. Some people told me they were ready to commit suicide, including a very prominent doctor in Indianapolis several years ago that was ready to commit suicide until he saw me on one of the A Haunting episodes. And he said he felt that God urged him to contact me. He did. And that was quite a story in itself. And God worked through me to free that man from the evil and voodoo curses that were on him. But I've heard that many, many times over that clients were pretty much at the end of the rope until they were going through the channels or happened to be watching a certain program that I was on. And then they reached out and God did the rest.
Well, I'm just glad there are people such as yourself, Bill, that does go in there toe to toe, as I call it, with these dark entities. And we've got so much to get into today, and no rush. We're no other show after this. I done a stream before this one, and I was
You're
telling,
going to need your energy for
yeah,
this one.
I was telling Bill, the weirdest thing I came across today. This ancient order of, I know, astral traveling witch hunters that were basically given a blessing by the Catholic Church to begin with, and then only for that to get revoked and them to be rounded up for the same crimes that they had been hunting witches for previously. I tell you, it's absolutely mind blowing, Woo. But you know what it done? It put me right in the mood for speaking to you tonight, Bill, because
Well, praise God.
yeah, I mean, it was talking about how these people were able to shapeshift, go into
Yeah.
animals, and I'm thinking, at what point did like the church at the time think this is a good thing? Then, I mean, this is obviously coming from a good place, right? Shapeshifting into
Well, it goes
animals. What
right
can go
back to
wrong?
what I said before, Kev, and it's unfortunate, and I'm not here to put anybody down or criticize them or whatever, but the fact of the matter is that when Roman Catholicism was formed by Constantine the Great, um, they took a lot of pagan practices and combined them into this new religion of Christianity and Catholicism. And so you see some of those types of things mixed in there. I could give many, maybe we'll do a show on that sometime. But it's true, and I'm not knocking anyone. I'm just presenting truth, just like what we're going to talk about here shortly. I'm not against anybody or knocking anybody. I am presenting what I believe that is plausible, and you feel the same way, or we wouldn't be presenting this. So we're not out to twist anybody's arms one way or the other, but we do have a responsibility and obligation to share truth as agents for God and messengers for God.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. And we're obviously going to be getting into one of the most weird musical conspiracies that there are out there. And I was actually quite shocked that my mum had never heard of this. I mean, Should have been kicking about, twisting and jiving to the Beatles back in the day, no doubt. But I, I'm really looking forward to this because this is still something that I was made aware of only a couple of years ago by a guest, and it's one of the most intriguing kind of narratives that I think there is to go over. And the reason being that there's so much evidence to suggest that Paul McCartney is FAUL McCartney. Now, we're going to get to that in a moment, but just so that the audience know, you know, we haven't like baited you in here with the FAUL McCartney stuff and then talk about something else. We are getting to that. But Bill, let's catch up quickly on what's been going on with you personally, you know, the past week or so.
Yeah.
Obviously, your work still affected right now, and everyone around the world in varying shapes or forms. We're all being affected by this. And I know a lot of people come here for comfort in the fact that you pray against all of that stuff going on right now. And I don't know if you want to say a quick blessing before we get going today and really raise that vibration out there. And let's see if we can shake off some of the darkness that seems to be encroaching, right?
Absolutely, Kev. Yeah, so we'll start this, and I'm glad you segued into this because absolutely, I always want to start with a prayer, and we'll pray against this virus, bioweapon, whatever you want to call it. And yes, it has affected my travel. However, I'm absolutely inundated with phone calls and text and messages from people who are in need, and this is every single day. Without fail. So that hasn't changed. The only thing that has changed is my ability to get on an airplane and go to somebody. But I've been super busy, plus working on my latest book called The Seventh Book. And that is a free book that I'm going to offer that book for free download because it's so important. I feel so strongly about the content, which is all faith-based, Kev. It's goodness from the first page to the last. And yeah, it kind of falls in line with the connection and 10 steps to victory, but it has a lot of additional information as well. I think that it's very important for people to read this and become empowered, just like we'll do at the end of the show today, raise people's frequency and vibration and clean the slate for them by the power of God. The book will offer valuable information and powerful prayers as well that can help the person on a day-to-day basis maintain and keep their foot over top of the devil and move forward in what I call warrior mode, faith, strength, and courage. So I'm looking forward to getting that book out soon. Again, it will be a free download for all. And then I'm going to go to work, and you'll be going to work too, on Stranger Than Fiction Part 2, which I think is going to be an even better book than Stranger Than Fiction Part 1, which was a great book.
Absolutely, and I've actually, give me 2 seconds. There we go. Yes, I've got it there. I'm knocking everything off the desk as we go. Yeah, there's the book there.
See, I won't hold it up, but you will.
My 140 into the writing world, and no, I'm looking forward to contributing to that again. And I'm also, I've got the writing bug back a little bit. So watch this space, as they say, Bill. But yeah,
well, you're very gifted. That's for sure. You're a gifted writer, and you would have no problem writing your own book. But what you wrote in the Stranger Than Fiction 1, Part 1, was absolutely outstanding, amazing. So I'm very much looking forward to you writing something even better in this Stranger Than Fiction Part 2.
One day, brother, one day I'll get a book out there. I will. I don't know if people are ready for it yet. That's the thing. And I know that there's people right now listening. My good friend Jason, he is looking after his mum at home right now because of everything going on. And this
God
was
bless
where
him and his mom.
Yeah, this is where he experienced shadow entities before, right? But he was telling me when he called into the show not long ago, Bill, that he was a bit worried that this was happening again, the shadow stuff. But he fell back on something.
Contact me.
Yeah, well, he fell back on something that I rely on as well, and it's that warrior prayer that you've given both to me and Jason. And I know that Jason took really good strength from that, and it did help him. You know, despite what anyone thinks out there, you know, there's somebody that got practical help from what Bill's offering here. And then I'm going to hand it back to you then so we can say a quick blessing before we get into the fall
Okay.
guy, as I like to call him, Bill.
Yeah, he is that for sure. And Father, I thank you, praise you for this blessed and appointed time and this blessed and appointed gathering. And Father, as always, I pray that you work through Kevin and I to be a blessing to everyone out here that's listening in or watching. And Father, I ask that you please hear my prayer, and I pray that they're joining in prayer with me right now. We pray against this coronavirus, COVID-19, bioweapon, whatever it is, Father. We pray against it, and I ask that you absolutely kill it, destroy it, and take it off of the face of the earth. Furthermore, Father, I ask that you absolutely destroy all of the devil's plans that he has as far as getting everyone in line to receive the mark of the beast and anything and everything else in a negative, adverse way that he is planning against us, the people of planet Earth, your children. And I pray that you set your face against him and destroy all of his plans. And I pray that you'll bless us with mercy. We come back to you, Father. We repent for anything that we've done to upset you in any way. And I ask that you bless us all and have favor on us and help us to move forward as a people. And I ask, Father, that you'll work through all of us to be a blessing to others and a shining example of your love, mercy, and goodness. Father, we give you the praise and the thanks and the glory for everything forevermore. In Yeshua Jesus' name, glory, hallelujah.
Well said, Bill. And let us then embark on this journey down a rabbit hole that, compared to some others, and this is what I told my mum when she first said to me, what is it about FAUL? And without having the facts in front of me at the time, what I did remember was from working with Ben Emlyn-Jones. Big shout out to Ben. He was the first guy to give me the heads up on this one. And
All right, Ben.
as far as conspiracies go, and I hate that term, but as far as theories go, this one has got a lot of what could be called circumstantial, but what I would prefer to offer as supporting evidence. And it's definitely not something that when you sit down with an open mind and look at all the data that's out there, I'm not saying we're going to change your mind if you think we're talking rubbish tonight, but it certainly, like I say, makes for a compelling discussion. I want to ask you, Bill, you like your music? I mean, you see the guitars there. What made you first aware of Paul versus FAUL? And then we'll get into it.
Yeah, I'm thinking back because you're right, Kev. I was a musician. I still play, so I'm still a musician. There's certain music I don't play anymore, but I grew up listening to, rock music, the Beatles and, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix. That's how I learned how to play guitar. I learned by ear, and I started matching up sounds from those records to the chords, and that's how I learned how to play. I can't remember exactly what it was, and I'm scrambling right now in my mind to try and remember what it was that alerted me to this. I didn't know anything about it for many years until I would probably say somewhere around either the late 90s or early 2000s. And I can't remember how I happened upon it, but something did alert me to it. And I started digging and researching. And the more and more I dug, the more information I found. And it started out with these clues on it may have been a friend of mine talking about it or something that piqued my interest.
I must admit, Bill, you've talked about the Mandela Effect before. And when you first heard about it, you dismissed it off the bat. And that's how I was when I first heard Ben talking about this whole Paul McCartney thing. There was a voice in my mind going, oh, come on. This is just, what is this even all about,
Right, you would say rubbish.
But like you with the Mandela Effect, when it was, in fact, synchronicity of work. It was somebody from Scotland that prompted
Yeah,
Bill to actually. I think Bill went in with the intention of maybe explaining to the person, how they'd maybe got it wrong and how scripture can't be changing before our very eyes,
yeah,
right? And
yeah, it's
well,
true.
yeah, you got shown otherwise, and that was the same with me with Paul McCartney and
Yeah,
FAUL. So I don't know where you want to start this, where you want to really take it and tell the listeners what the whole theory is, what happened.
yeah.
I'll
I'll
hand
just
it.
start with the
Yeah,
file that I sent to you, and I'll try and be as brief as possible. But what I've tried to do here, Kevin, I sent you a plethora of information over the last 24 hours
and we've
about
got
this.
lots of links to look at. I've got them all
Oh,
open for us. Yeah, like I say,
yeah,
no rush. We can take our time. We can kick back, and
yeah.
all good, brother, all
And
good.
I tried to present it, not so much saying, oh, yeah, well, I saw this on the album cover and I heard this backwards. This presentation is more about quote unquote forensic evidence from professors. And just before we went on air, I found what I was looking for from a Dr. Henry Truby, Miami professor who did voice analysis for the voices of Paul and FAUL. And according to Dr. Truby's research, he said that the voice on the song Yesterday, which was came out in 1965, which was sang by Paul, the Paul McCartney, according to Dr. Henry Truby and his analysis, he says that the voice on that record is different than the voice of so-called FAUL on the song "Let It Be," which came out in 1970. He said, beyond a shadow of a doubt, his findings were that those voices are two different voices. So that's very interesting right there. So that's where I want to go with this and try and keep it to as much plausible information and less speculation. I'm just going to quote what these people are saying.
Absolutely, brother. And I've got the actual document that you've put together as well. We've got websites we can look at, things like
Yeah,
this. But like you say there, a voice analysis, and you end up getting a different voice, that has to raise an eyebrow. It's at least worthy
yeah.
of further investigation, right?
It would be like us doing this show right now and then say a couple of years or a year down the line, somebody comes along and who knows, maybe Mandela or something, something changes or there's imposters that come and say, well, yeah, no, we're Bill Bean and Kev Baker. And then they analyze and say, well, wait a minute, the voices are not the same. How can that be Bill Bean and Kev Baker? The voice from 2020 as opposed to the voice in 2021, something's wrong. Their voices aren't the same. So it's craziness. I understand it. And I understand how people could dismiss something like this as well, because it would seem to the normal person just absolutely preposterous and impossible. Secondly, when a normal, quote, normal person is presented with this type of information, in some instances it becomes overwhelming. So it's very easy to dismiss and say, look, I can't go there. It's too much. I can't go there. I'm just going to stay the course. And that's Paul. And I enjoy it. My own sister, and I told you this before, two people that I knew probably wouldn't like this would be my own sister. And I talked with her yesterday. And she said, you're crazy. You're going to do a show on that? I said, yes. And so I don't know if she's watching
Our
or
good
not.
friend Jason, he's already told me, Kev, I'm going to be very triggered by tonight. But I just encourage everyone to, forget everything and keep an open mind and just listen to some of the stuff that Bill's put together,
Right.
some of the stuff we're going to show you. And then after all of that, if you still think there's nothing there, all very well, all good.
Exactly.
And,
No harm at
it's
all.
not going to affect us one way or another. And that's what I really like about what we've got going on here. Myself and Bill were the perfect example. We don't agree on everything. And when we
No,
disagree, we sometimes we're at opposite ends of the spectrum. But it doesn't ever impede or encroach on our friendship. And I think
it never will.
if we can get that out to the audience, if nothing else, that alone is a good thing to take away from today. So Paul
And another
McCartney, right?
person that'll be upset, Kev, is our good buddy Mike Supa. He's another one that, again, he loves Paul McCartney. Mike is a professional musician, and he's played with some of the biggest names in the music business. And he is a big Paul slash FAUL fan, and so it's difficult for him, and I've mentioned this stuff to him before, and Mike is also a former police officer, so again, he is a very tough cookie when it comes to believing anything.
Give it
He
time,
has to
Bill.
really dig in and analyze. Yeah, so who knows? He
Give
may
it
hear
time.
some of this, and
Yeah,
we'll see.
you've planted the seed, right? See, you've got these clean-cut boys from Liverpool. They take the musical world and the world by storm.
Yeah.
They head on over to the States, and the rest is rock and roll history. But what if something really, really strange happened in the midst of all of this? And Bill, if we are to believe then that something did happen, let's start with what potentially happened to Paul, shall we?
Yeah.
I mean, what happened
Yeah.
to the real guy? What happened there?
Well, the story goes, and again, we could never go in a court of law and prove this. Well, we could if there was a DNA test that was given. That would end the speculation on everything. If he just did a DNA test, then it'd be game over, and there'd be no more dialogue on any of this. But anyway, the story goes that Paul was the real James Paul McCartney was killed in a car crash. People have speculated different dates. Some people said September 11th, 1966. Others say November 9th, 1966, and was replaced by a Scottish look-alike by the name of William Campbell Shepherd. They call him Billy Shears. Now, according to the story, Billy Shears, and I went back and researched, and there is and was a Billy Shears, and he did have a band called the Pepper Pots. So he's called Billy Shears and the Pepper Pots. Now, I find that interesting too, Kev. Think about that. And for everybody out there, think about this, because I'm going to bring something up that'll tie in with this. Billy Shears and the Pepper Pots. So when 67 came around, it was the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, right?
Yep.
Was Billy Shears Sgt. Pepper? Billy Shears and the Pepper Pots? Did he become Sgt. Pepper? What about the song line in there in the song? Let me introduce to you the one and only Billy Shears, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So they were introducing, as the story goes, and I'll tell you, again, I've researched this for many years, and boy, oh boy, when you read some of these things, and I've read 2 books by this Billy Shears character, Memoirs and Billy's Back, and he brags through both books about how this was just an incredible, it would be on the scale of, it would be just on this gigantic scale back in that time frame, especially. I'm sure it had never been done before. It may have never been done since on that type of scale for this, if in fact this did happen. And again, the story says that Paul McCartney was killed in this car crash. He was decapitated, as the story goes. They kept everything hush hush. Supposedly, now, again, if any of this is true, it would make sense, because if the Beatles were a Tavistock Institute creation, which I have reason to believe
they were,
yeah, then it would really make sense that you now have Tavistock and probably the CIA as well with the MK Ultra program that would be behind this as a machine. So no matter what happens, and I don't care if all 4 of those guys would have been killed or died or whatever, they would have found 4 replacements to keep that machine going, because it was very important for the time to keep such a thing going. It was a social engineering program.
Well, Bill, to add to that, the Tavistock, very instrumental in social engineering, like you say there.
Yeah.
And They're an institute, obviously infamous when you get into the world of conspiracy and things. And this might seem unrelated, but I think it's definitely connected because I done a show last week in which I took a look at a think tank in the UK called the Institute for Government.
Yeah.
And they've got a big document called Mind Space. Now, Mind Space is about changing the behavior of a population and ways and methods and means of taking a population from one behavior, one set of norms, to another.
Yeah.
Now, why did I bring that up? The reason I bring that up is that away from, your average Jane and John Doe, Joe Blogs, this is how the world works. And we might not appreciate it, but when we looked at the whole Manson family, we got into
Yeah.
the world of the CIA, we got into
Yeah.
the MK Ultra, and we talked about the Doors and Laurel Canyon. And Laurel Canyon obviously came a little bit later after the Beatles followed on from it, but we can see how the music of that time was used to change the behavior of a generation and shape the culture moving forward for that time period. And the Beatles were
Correct.
no different because we're going from the whole wholesome nuclear family, nice, kind of very friendly music, nothing abrasive, to something completely new that took an entire generation of British and American kids and really changed society. And music has the power to do that, Bill, doesn't it? And that's
No
why a
question.
band like the Beatles, they could be very much at the heart of something like this, which furthermore means there would be a very strong desire not to let your quartet of change have anything happen to it, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. And furthermore, there were other groups as well, not just the Beatles. The Beatles were the biggest one, but there were other groups as well that I believe Tavistock worked through and put together. Also, I think this started even before Tavistock launched their plan. I think that probably there were factions, and whether that was the CIA or whatever dark ops and agencies may have been involved. I really think it started with like Bill Haley and the Comets. So again, you're talking probably I want to say mid 50s. So it starts with Rock Around the Clock. Not that there was anything bad or wrong with that song, but that's where it started because it got the kids sort of moving away from the family per se into something else. Families were structured back then that before the age of TV, the families, man, they did everything together, and they would even huddle around a radio in the evenings after Dad got home from work, and the family would huddle with Dad around the radio to listen to these radio programs. So families were really, really sticking together back then. And so when rock and roll was introduced to America with Bill Haley and then Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis and then Elvis came along, it was setting the stage. And it was already starting in the social engineering to kind of pull the kids away from their parents. It was leading to some sexual promiscuity, some drinking, and probably a limited amount of drug use back then, not much, but there was some. But then when the Beatles came along, everything changed overnight. So they presented them as the lovable mop tops and I want to hold your hand. She loves you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. These were the really popular songs by them in the beginning. However, even though it seemed innocent on the surface, I do believe that there was a very nefarious plan underneath of that. Because again, can I prove it in a court of law? No. But I've done enough research to where I'm confident in saying what I'm saying here that I believe is true. The Beatles had an occult connection, and it very well may have been through the Tavistock Agency. Because again, think about this, Kev. If you have these types of programs launched, and in fact, if if they are in fact programs of social engineering and these types of things to try and break up the American family and create rebellion in the children that will lead them to making some really bad choices, which may be uh, drinking or drugs, or sexual promiscuity that would, at a young age, get teenage girls pregnant or whatever it may be. All those things were happening not long after the Beatles came along. Now, I'm not putting the blame squarely on their shoulders, but I am saying that I do believe that the Tavistock Agency and perhaps the CIA and maybe other agencies were very much involved in this. This, in my opinion, was a social engineering experiment, or maybe even some type of plan that was put into place that would destabilize America to create this level of rebellion in the children against their parents. And just look at where we are today. I've said this before, and it's worth repeating. We are where we are today as a society because of those things that happened back then. So this has been a very long-term plan that has been put into place. And furthermore, I read that the real Paul McCartney and John Lennon, especially, had a very strong fascination with Aleister Crowley. They supposedly got a lot of their song lyrics from Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. And there's also speculation that there was another man behind the writing of a lot of these songs, which is plausible. Again, not to take away from the songwriting abilities of Lennon and McCartney, but I've also studied that there's another man that said was an agent from Tavistock that wrote a lot of those songs. Is it true? I don't know. But I will say this, that according to John Lennon and McCartney actually talked about this, FAUL talked about this, that lyrics were taken from like Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. And it's interesting because Lewis Carroll, read into him, and boy, he was a pretty wicked individual as well, Kev. So,
Big time. And, for people
yeah,
out there, it can be really daunting to kind of hear all of this, your favourite music bands in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s onwards, all used for some nefarious means. But you come to learn that even back in the early 1900s, they were talking about making intelligent machines. And one day that would eventually happen. And here we are today, AI. My point being, plans when it comes to the elites and the people that run the planet, governments, etc., they don't think like us. They don't think next week, next month, next paycheck. They think generationally. They think so far in advance. And that's why plans that were put in place back in the 40s, 50s may not be coming to fruition until right now, today. It's an incremental stepping kind of process. You can't go from A to Z in one jump, and you have to take the society and guide them and shape them and invisibly kind of steer them exactly where you want to go, but at the same
you're
time
right.
make people think that it's entirely organic, it's something new, and it's something against the establishment. But in
So they'll get
reality,
on board with
yeah,
it.
exactly. But in reality, it's coming from the very establishment that they say they're rebelling against. It's so clever.
Yeah.
And this is where you get the whole 5D chess thing. But for people out
Well,
there, they haven't heard of the Tavistock, just really quickly, the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations is a British not-for-profit organisation that applies social science to contemporary issues and problems. It was initiated in 1946 when it developed from the Tavistock Clinic and was formally established as a separate entity in 1947. The Journal of Human Relations is published on behalf of the Tavistock Institute by Sage Publications, and it goes into all of it, the history of it, and I urge you all to look into that if you haven't looked into Tavistock already. But we're going to move on from Tavistock to back to where Bill was
yeah.
laying out all of this. Over to you, Bill.
Well, then it goes on to say that they find this man William Campbell Shepherd, again, now according to, if this in fact is Billy Shears, according to him in his books, he says that And he doesn't come right out and say, but he says that he is closely related to Aleister Crowley, and he was taught things by Aleister Crowley. And so he went on to say also that he is a master Freemason, just like Aleister Crowley was, and he is very well versed in magic and the practice of magic. He's an expert of disguise. He's an expert in deception, master mimic, and went on to say that he was far more talented than the real Paul ever was. So, I mean, he was just gushing over himself in both of these books. But the story really came out. It says this rumor first began in October 1969 when clues allegedly planted by the Beatles themselves began to be uncovered. And these were clues that were put on record albums and back mask messages. Now, George Martin, who was their producer, I've also read, can't prove it, but I've read there's been speculation that he was a Tavistock agent that was sent to be a handler for these guys. And again, this man was an expert in music. Nothing is impossible. So for people who would think, okay, this is all rubbish, and how could they get a look-alike? And he did have some surgery, by the way. He had a lot of surgery. But that said, you get a look-alike, then what? How does he all of a sudden play like Paul and sing like Paul and write like Paul? Well, there are people in these agencies, and whether that's the CIA or Tavistock or some of these other alphabet agencies, that are trained, and they're trained in whatever it is that the handlers or programmers need to train them in. And so there are people in wait in some of these agencies that very much could step into a role or situation, if need be, that are real musicians or whatever it may be, whatever they're trained in, could be an athlete or whatever, they could step in because they would have the abilities to do that. So I've heard that many times. You're crazy. Nobody could ever play a bass like Paul McCartney or sing like him. Well, here's some examples, and I want people to, if you will, if you're interested in going further in this, take a look at some videos, and I urge you to take a look at videos of Paul McCartney pre-1966, so 65 and back. They're on YouTube. You can find them. Take a look at that Paul, okay? Now, here's some things to look for. The real Paul, when he was singing and playing the bass, he had a way of shaking his head from side to side. He did it all the time. FAUL does not do that. The real Paul never looked, so I'm a guitarist, and so when I play, a lot of times I don't have to look at what I'm playing. I can feel it. I don't have to look. A person that has skills, in most instances, if they're playing guitar or bass, they don't have to look at the neck to see where they're going. And the real Paul never did. He was an expert. FAUL, when he's playing, he looks. He always looks where he's at. Another thing, there are photographs of FAUL playing the guitar right-handed, because the story goes that he was originally right-handed, and then he had to learn how to play left-handed. So that would probably be the reason for him having to look, is because it's not natural for him to play left-handed. It'd be the same thing. I am left-handed, but I play right-handed. And I've tried to play left-handed before, and it is not natural. It does not feel natural to me at all. It would take a great deal of practice to be able to actually play the guitar this way, left-handed. So those are things to look for. And also, real Paul had a little moon-shaped face. So he had very small features. So he was small in structure. They say he was like 5'11", though. All the Beatles were the three Beatles, Paul, John, and George, supposedly were all 5'11", and Ringo, I think, was like 5'8" or 5'9". So Ringo was the shortest. But the other three, they were all the same height. Supposedly they were all 5'11". but Paul had a very rounded, moon-shaped, small face with droopy eyes, and his ears were set funny. They were not set straight up. They were kind of angled. And another thing that he did when he was playing and singing, not only would he shake his head side to side, but sometimes he would spin. He would do it because they had those Teddy boots on, those Beatle boots that they wore back then, and he would spin off that heel. And so he had a very distinctive style and way that he played and went about it. But then when FAUL came along, 66, and I find another interesting thing, Kev, that in 66, late 66, the Beatles had announced that they were no longer going to perform live. They just didn't want to do it anymore. And supposedly now, this is after the real Paul's death, and they're in this dilemma, and faux Paul is not ready to be presented to the public. And so, according to what I've read, he had a lot of facial surgeries, and he had a resemblance to the real Paul, but not an exact resemblance. So they had to do some facial surgeries to, and I find it interesting as well that in this time period, nobody can find Paul. So the story's not out about any accident or anything like that. Nobody can find Paul. And Paul turns up, which would be FAUL, turns up in Kenya, of all places. He turns up in Kenya with Mal Evans, who was like an assistant to the Beatles, very integral part of them. And it is also rumored that Mal Evans contributed to the content of the Sgt. Pepper album.
And Bill, on the screen right now, this character here is allegedly William Shears Campbell.
Yeah.
And
and also, Kev, he says in his books, Billy Shears says that he is a direct descendant of William Wallace.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a claim to be making.
Yes, sir. That's what he says.
I mean, if we even look at that there, I mean, if I had no idea about any of this and somebody showed me that picture and said, Kev, who do you think that looks like? I'd be like, whoa, that's like a young, geeky Paul McCartney right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kev, do you remember that song by The Who called We Don't Get Fooled Again?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Infamous
that song is about Paul, and it's about FAUL, and it says a parting on the left is now parting on the right because Paul's hair parted on the left and FAUL's hair parts on the right. Paul, real Paul, had these dark brown eyes, and FAUL has green eyes.
And you can see the hair going different ways there.
Yeah,
natural kind of.
And Paul had dark hair. Paul, the real Paul, had if it wasn't black, it was very dark brown. FAUL has lighter hair. So how do you explain, all of a sudden this guy's got different colored eyes, he's got different colored hair, and he's a few inches taller because real Paul was 5'11", faux Paul is at least 6'2", with a bigger frame. He towered over those guys. All of a sudden, so when Sgt. Pepper came out, faux Paul, FAUL, he was towering over George and John. And you're like, well, what did he grow? And he wasn't wearing platform shoes. There were a lot of times the photographs were taken and he was in bare feet or his socks when the other guys had shoes on and he was still taller than them.
And there's, in your notes, there was somebody phoned into a radio show to begin with, right? That's what really kind of got this whole ball rolling, I believe.
That's where it started. So, and I'm getting off track, and I'm glad you brought it back there.
I've got your back, Bill. I've got you, man. I'm telling you,
that's
dude.
That's why we're such a good team.
That's what I'm here for, brother. You see, you almost wandered off the plantation there. Pardon the pun from your recent show. I've got you, man. Back to you, Bill.
That's why we're so strong together.
Got you, man.
So it says that, again, this started in October of 1969. Now, how can it be that the rumor starts? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm wrong there because it's saying 69. I was going to say, how can that be? Because it's saying that he died in November of 66. But yeah, 3 years later, in October of 1969, the rumor begins. And a man by the name of Tom called in to this Detroit radio show. and a DJ by the name of Russ Gibb was having this show. And during the show, he receives this call from a listener named Tom, insisting that Paul McCartney was dead, and asked Russ Gibb to play the Beatles song Revolution 9 backwards. Gibb did, and heard when he played it backwards, he heard a voice say, "Turn me on, dead man, turn me on, dead man." So this is where it was really discovered that something was awry here. So now they start going to the albums, and they're finding more and more of these clues in the music and on the album covers as well. And again, in reading both of Billy Shears' books, I think Memoirs was 666 pages, imagine that. And Billy's Back, that book was 419 pages. I read every page, cover to cover. And Billy Shears lays this out in great detail and lists the songs going down and album covers and everything, and how they were putting the messages in there all along to let certain people know who could tune in, was the phrase that he used, to understand that real Paul was gone. They kept the band together, brought Billy Shears in, not only brought him in, because according to what he writes, John Lennon was absolutely distraught. Lennon and McCartney were very close. They were great collaborators, best of friends, and they were distraught. George Harrison was also very distraught. And in the song, "While My Guitar Gently Weeps," as the song is fading out, he's saying, "Paul, Paul, miss him, love him, love him." It's all fading out to where you can't understand what's being said, but then when you pay attention to it, you can hear it. And they did this over and over and over again in their music, in their art, the album covers, backwards messages. They continued to do this, and FAUL still does it to this very day on his album and CD covers, in his music, in his words. He does it to this very day.
And Bill, you could kind of, and again, it wouldn't be in a court of law, but you could say, if you're looking at the occult angle of this,
oh yeah,
which obviously runs through the music scene. We mentioned
very
Crowley
deep
earlier, and lesser magic,
Yes,
hiding things in plain sight.
that's what this is.
A cross between rubbing people's face in it and putting it out there so that it actually takes hold and works. All of the hallmarks of what we're seeing, of what you're talking about here.
Yeah. And think about it, Kev. The Beatles were so big, John Lennon was quoted as saying that they could no longer hear themselves play, that the audiences were so hysterical and so loud, they could have stopped playing, or could have been playing everything wrong, and the crowd still would have cheered them, because they were absolutely just worshiping these people. That's what the crowds were doing. They were worshiping these Beatles. And so Lennon was stated as saying that they could have played everything out of tune, out of key, and out of sequence, and everybody still would have loved them and cheered them. So when you have that type of hold on the masses, you can do anything and everything in plain sight, and they are still going to worship you. And that's how they were able to pull this off, because the people were still so enamored with the Beatles. The Beatles were the number one thing. It was Elvis and the Beatles, Elvis and the Beatles. And so each one of them.
It's almost, Bill, the ultimate in alchemical transformations, to take one band member, totally replace them with something new, and nobody knows the difference,
And nobody cares.
Nope.
They don't care. I've had people say to me, well, if he was a replacement, he was the best replacement you could ever think of, and I'm still going to watch him and listen to him and all that. He's great and all that. Look, I don't deny FAUL's talent. Obviously, he has a lot of talent to be able to do what he does and what he's been able to do for all these years. My issue is, A, the program that was set up to do this, which again, I firmly believe was Tavistock in conjunction with the CIA, MK Ultra, because this was about social engineering. This was about breaking up the American family. This was about creating the spirit of rebellion through sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And it absolutely worked like a charm perfectly. And so that's where my issues are. Furthermore, now a lot of people may disagree with me on this, but a great fraud has been perpetrated. If in fact what we're saying here is true, then this is an imposter that has been perpetrating a fraud to the tune of probably billions of dollars, over the last, 50 years or whatever it is. So I have an issue with that as well. But I have no doubt that whether it was Paul or any of the other ones or all of them, they would have replaced those people and continued on with a version of, because this was a machine, and this machine was part of a program that was designed to create a breaking apart of the American family and a spirit of rebellion in the young people, and it carried right on through. So think about this, and I'm going to read a little bit more before I get too far off track. I go on to say that I've read many books on the subject, and though it seems nearly impossible to me that a double could step in and assume the role of Paul McCartney, my final conclusion on the matter is that it very well may have happened, and it continues to happen to this day. Kev, you and I talked a couple of shows ago about the possible link between Manson and CIA's MK Ultra program. Here we are again. We're connecting dots because this Paul is dead topic, it ties in, just like you said a little while ago, with the alphabet agencies and Tavistock and all that. I feel that it's necessary for us to go back and do historical research into things. If you truly want to know where you are, then you have to, or where you're going, then you have to go back and see where we were as a people, as a society, as people of planet Earth, because the truth is stranger than fiction, pardon the pun. And when you go back and you look at some things, you just scratch your head and go, wow, we are here because of that. Those seeds were planted and those programs were implemented to get us to where we are right now. So this has been a very long process, but a very carefully calculated plan to herd the masses, which are like cattle. Some call us goyim. We are insignificant. They are the power elite, and they answer to the overlords who are the underlings of the devil. So this is how this works. And so the regular, everyday, ordinary people, or sheeple, are nothing more than cattle. And you had a very good analogy there earlier about how they would have to steer the people in certain directions. And that's what you do with herds of cattle. You have to get them in certain directions in the way that you want them to go and where you want them to go. It's very much the same thing here. And it's very sad that on our planet, and whether that is over there where you are or over here where I am, there are very few leaders in the world. Most people are followers, and they will follow along with anything and everything if it is presented in the right way. So this is where I challenge people to really start to question some things and wake up and look around you. I can't be any other way. God has created me to be a person of, I was born a leader, never a follower. When the crowd goes one way, I'm going the other. It's not a natural suspicion that I have, but it's a natural curiosity. When a man gives me his word and tells me something, I believe it, and I take him at his word. However, we see the patterns in our lifetime, especially, of people in power saying certain things that we discover are not true. So for me, I always want to know the truth. So this leads me down some strange and dark roads. It's seeking truth, because knowledge is power. And God says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So I want to know. I want to know the truth. And if I'm vilified in the process, well, then so be it. I don't want people to hate me or think I'm crazy or anything like that. But I want people to take a step back and understand why I do what I do in researching these things, because it is digging for truth. And if we can discover these types of truths, then we can be ready for more people that would try and deceive us, like the leaders that are, and they know who they are. More importantly, God knows who they are. The leaders on the earth now that are deceiving us in so many ways for so many reasons. So I always pray that God reveals truth to me. And it's not a magical thing to where I say, oh, Father, please reveal this to me. Sometimes I have to dig. And God is with me as I'm digging, and he's confirming truth to me as I'm digging for it. But I have to do my part as well. And that's in all things. So if a person thinks that you can just say a prayer and, oh, God, please bless me with $1 million right now, $1 million is not going to fall in your lap. Now, we put a prayer into God. That doesn't mean that God's going to answer the prayer. Furthermore, we have to do our work. So if we say, Father, if I were to say, Father, could you please bless me with $1 million now? If I prayed that, then I would expect that I would have to work very hard on my part and on my end to implement whatever course of action it may take to generate something to bring in those types of monies, and then God would bless it, and then I would have my $1 million. It doesn't magically happen to where you pray and then something happens. You have to work and you have to dig for it. So that's what this is all about.
Unless you want to take the easy option, and as many musical artists have told us over the years what they did, they took the easy option and they signed a deal. Not with a record company, though. No, they signed a deal with the devil. And
great point. That's a great point, brother.
It is. It really is. It's a shortcut, you know? If you want it all instantly, not willing to put in the time, the work, the pain that life brings, you know, you can cut it all out. Just go to the dark side, right? And you see it so many times, and that's where that whole music industry, when you get to the kind of real heart of it, behind the scenes stuff, it is so evil. The people there, they don't even hide it. You know, it's in all of their videos, it's in all of their music, and
it's right there wide open. And what's unfortunate, Kev, is that, again, the people that are following along with this and they start to worship those individuals, especially the young people, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're going around carrying out these types of things that these people are showing in these songs and videos.
And you're going to get into Billy's book, Billy's Back. We're going to look at some of that. I've got the website here, but
yeah,
I think it's really important, again, even in your notes here, that we emphasize the role of Aleister Crowley in all of this, because from
you
then...
read my mind again. Yeah, that's where I was just getting ready to go.
Until this day. You know, I remember recent years, Bob Geldof's daughter, unfortunately, God rest her soul, Peaches Geldof.
Yeah.
She passed away.
She was killed.
She definitely questionable. And then I remember looking at an article about her home and a full library. And it was a library like I haven't quite seen before, because it was all dedicated to the lives and the works of Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
And you hear them referencing Crowley in songs today.
Over and over and over again, Kev.
And
from every type of musical genre you could think of, every type of genre. I don't care what type of music it is. If you take some time to research, you'll find that today's stars and yesterday's stars have this amazing fascination with the black magician known as Aleister Crowley.
And then if we come back to the Beatles then, and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Band. There we go.
Yeah.
And
he's on there twice. He's on the cover.
He's up
twice.
there in the back corner. You can see him up there, that baldy head.
And he's in there again somewhere. So he appeared twice on the cover.
Yeah, but that takes us back into where you're going with your kind of notes here, Bill. So I'll hand it back to you, man.
They were fascinated with him. And again, you know, I say here that It's been long rumored that the Beatles were a Tavistock Institute creation. We've covered that. And that said, if it's true, then perhaps it might explain why the Beatles had this deep fascination with Aleister Crowley and the occult. It's true. Um, for those of you who don't know who Aleister Crowley is, he was a satanic black magician. He was called the wickedest man on the earth. And his time, he was born in 1875, but his prominent decades were the 20s and 30s and 40s, and he died in 1947. And I find another interesting thing that on the Sergeant Pepper, like Kev's showing there, Crowley appeared twice on the cover of the Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, but he's also talked about in the song, the Sergeant Pepper's song. It was 20 years ago today that Sergeant Pepper taught the band to play. So at that point, they're making reference to Aleister Crowley because the Sergeant Pepper album came out in 67, 20 years after the death of Aleister Crowley. And again, there were ties between Lennon and McCartney and their fascination with Crowley. It was rumored that the real Paul had some deep, dark things going on in his life as well as John Lennon. And Billy Shears says that he was that Aleister Crowley was a very close family member, and he was taught as a young child by Aleister Crowley. I don't doubt that. I really don't. Billy Shepherd, again, he claims that he's a classically trained musician who can read and write music, arrange orchestras. He can play guitar, bass, drums, the kazoo, the ukulele, keyboards, and piano. Paul McCartney, the real Paul, couldn't read or write music. He was very talented, but he couldn't read or write music. This guy claims that not only can he read and write music, he can play all these different instruments plus arrange orchestras. So that's quite an amazing thing. He further claims that he was a session musician for many years and also fronted a band called Billy and the Pepper Pots. So again, they were on the, there was a label called Mercy Beat. So they were doing all these Mercy Beat songs. It was even called Mercy Mania. They had all these groups that were doing Beatles cover songs and Little Richard songs and stuff like that. It was the Mercy Beat. And so these were, he had already had the exposure of being a Beatles cover song guy anyway. So he's always playing those types of songs already. So he was well versed in that. And what I'm about to read is a promo for his book, Billy's Back. And so this is in his own words. Read verifiable details of the Paul is Dead story that you have never heard before, including William taking over the Beatles and the McCartney estate. Now, what he says there, and I want everybody to think about this as well, because the Beatles before 67, and again, if the real Paul was killed in November of 66, then, pre-November 66, the Beatles were a different band. John Lennon was the guy in control of that band, and everybody knew it. And they looked different, they sounded different, and they acted different. And then after 66, when this Sgt. Pepper's album comes out, they're totally different. They look different. They act different. They sing different topics. So it went from She Loves You, Yeah, 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 and I Want to Hold Your Hand to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. The whole songbook, their whole philosophy and writing style changed. Now, how is that possible? I've written songs, not saying I've written anything of substance or that was any type of seller or whatever, but I write a certain way, okay? I couldn't see myself going and writing in a whole other. So if I'm writing songs for God right now and writing praise and worship type of songs, I couldn't see myself going and writing rap songs or psychedelic drug songs or whatever. I couldn't do it. There's just no way that I could do it. How was it possible that this group, who were the most successful band ever, and at the time they were the kings of everything, how and why would they transform from the lovable Mop Tops, again, She Loves You, Yeah, 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 and all these little innocent, supposedly love songs, to these heavier songs, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Helter Skelter, uh, Piggies, and all this kind of, this is a whole different paradigm shift. How is that possible? So then they go from, having no facial hair to these mop top things to all long hair, beards and mustaches, and psychedelic clothing. And now FAUL is several inches taller than the other guys. It all changed. And I would think that the most rabid Beatle fan would have to stop and take pause and say, wait a minute, he's right. How did that change seemingly overnight like that to where it was like a whole different band? So according to Billy, going back to what he said that the only way that he would take this position of Paul is that John Lennon would have to hand over the control of the band to him. And when I first read that, I thought, that's preposterous. How John Lennon's not going to give over his band. But if there was enough pressure from Tavistock, the CIA, or whomever may have been involved in this, I could see how John Lennon would relinquish control of the band. And I think that's exactly what happened. And so when Billy comes into the band, he's well versed in all this stuff. So now the songs change, the lyrics change, the content change, the message change. They are now avid drug users and promoting the use of drugs. Their look has changed. So the whole band became Billy's band, Paul, FAUL, whatever you want to call it. And he was the leader of the band. And if you go back and look at some videos post 1966, from 66 to 69, 70 was officially when they broke up, but they were already done by 69. That Let It Be 70 that album was a formality, and Abbey Road as well, formality. That was for the record company, but they were already done by 69. If you go back and you look at some of this footage, from 66 to 69, you go, wow, that's a whole different band. That if you put them side by side, and furthermore, it's confirmed on the Sgt. Pepper cover itself. Because, and Kev, if you could go back to that, I want people to look and see it for themselves. Look at what's on there. It's like the whole thing is a funeral, okay? The whole thing is like a funeral. And you see the wax figures of the old Beatles standing there, and you see the new guys. They're dressed up in those funny outfits, and they're all standing there. Look how much taller FAUL is there than the other guys on that cover. And furthermore, look down on the cover. It doesn't say the Beatles anymore. It says Beatles. And underneath of that is Paul's bass. See those yellow flowers right there? That's in the shape of a bass. And if you look even closer, it says Paul right there. This is a funeral scene.
Oh, brother, I'm telling you. And then let me take some of the workload off you here then, Bill.
Sure.
Because a lot of people might be thinking, right, the very best what we're getting here, very circumstantial, right?
We're going to get into some meat, that's for sure.
Give us some hard evidence. And if we go back to the website for Billy Shears, that's exactly what I'm going to give you. Because it says, besides the many song and album clues that even the experts have missed, you will also learn the hard physical evidence. Here's the examples. Chapter 4 reveals how it was proven in court in Germany that the current Paul does not have the same DNA as the earlier Paul. Chapter 34 identifies the professor in Florida who first published the fact that the new and old Pope have different voice prints, proving again.
Dr. Henry Truby. Yeah, we're going to get into him in a second, too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Proving again they cannot be the same person, if I make that smaller there. So yeah, I'll leave it there, Bill. But I mean, that one there, the DNA.
Yeah.
Now, I believe you can correct me if I'm...
That was a fraternity suit. He was being...
Yeah.
That was a fraternity case, and it got dismissed because the DNA was different.
Yeah, that's right. It was somebody had claimed that Paul, or as they came to find out, not Paul, somebody they obviously thought was Paul was the father, but when they checked the DNA, all different now. There's a couple of ways you can look at that.
It was years later. It was years. So Paul, the real Paul, got this woman pregnant. She had never been with a man before, so he was the first and only that she was ever with. So nobody else got her pregnant, and so he disappears from the scene. And so then years later, she decides that she wants to take him to court to, I guess, rightfully so, get child support or whatever for the child. And she was owed that, that's for sure. So they go back to court, and now it's FAUL. So Paul's gone. So years later, this comes, and now it's FAUL that goes to court. And of course, he had different DNA, and everything was dropped. And here, this poor woman not only didn't get what was due to her, justly due to her, and then her reputation was smeared after that. She had never been with anybody else before, but now her reputation is smeared because she's lost the case because the DNA doesn't match. Therefore, she must have slept with someone else.
It sounds preposterous on the face of it, doesn't it, folks? But it's not, because it goes further. And I'm just going to read a bit more of this blurb from this website, Bill.
Yeah.
Then I'll give it back to you, because it says here that Chapter 59 recounts the trouble that current Paul got into in Japan, when his fingerprints did not match those of the original Paul McCartney. Now, let me stop there then.
Yeah.
Because if your fingerprints don't match, say you're the suspect in a crime, Bill, and they've got the fingerprints of whoever the suspect was, they take your fingerprints don't match, you're ruled out, right? Because that's not you. That's a different person, different ID.
Yeah. And they had the real Paul's fingerprints on record, by the way, because the real Paul had gotten into some trouble back in the 50s. He was part of an arson, and he was arrested for it. And so they had the real Paul's fingerprints on file, and faux Paul's fingerprints did not match. And Japan was furious. They wanted to know who this imposter was. And it was someone through the royal family that a call was made, and that's how they got him out of jail. Otherwise, they would have detained him because they thought he was some kind of imposter trying to play a trick on the Japanese people, and they were furious. So it took a person and a call and a representative from the royal family to go there and get him out of this jam.
Why would the royal family even intervene on behalf of a pop star?
Because an agent.
An agent, yes. And, you know, maybe when the four guys, they originally hooked up to become the Beatles, I'm not saying they set out to be a tool of the Tavistock.
I agree.
I'm not saying that at all. I'd like to believe, and I firmly believe, they were all absolutely die-hard musicians.
Yeah.
They were a band, you know, they wanted to be the next big thing, but only somebody else seen them. And they thought, oh, you will be the next big thing, but you'll be our big thing. And
exactly right. And then, you know, the involvement of George Martin.
Yep.
And I do believe even the manager, Brian Epstein, was pressured into certain situations, and they had to make certain personnel changes. Pete Best was the original drummer, and he was out. They didn't want, he was a talented drummer, and they said he was the best looking guy in the group, and they didn't want him. He didn't fit what they wanted, and he was out. And so they wanted Ringo. He was a guy that they went and got and put in there. And Stuart Sutcliffe, who was the original bass player, there are some shadowy, murky details about that as well, because it was rumored that Sutcliffe had gotten into some kind of fight, and Lennon had kicked him in the head and all this kind of stuff, and it created some type of anger. He died. And so he was out of the picture. So it was, you know, always John and Paul and George, but, you know, Ringo was the last to come along, and they very much wanted him to be a part of that.
And this isn't the only kind of evidence that we've got for you. And I think the next part that you've put together, Bill, is thoroughly, thoroughly compelling, and really, I want people to really listen to this, because we're talking about somebody who's a forensic pathologist who actually specializes in the identification of people. Now, this is Gabriella Carlesi. Bill,
Yeah.
talk to us about Gabriella, and I'll pull her website up here.
Yeah, she's a forensic pathologist who specializes in identification of people through comparison of certain features of the skull and dental analysis as well. And Professor Francesco Gavazzeni is a specialist in computer analysis, and the two teamed up and they put their talents together, and they were able to use a computer to obtain high precision measurements of Paul McCartney's skull from various photos of his face. And so they got remarkable detail in this. And a publication called Wired had actually published the results on September 15th, 2009. And their findings again were that Paul had this moon-shaped round face, and FAUL has a longer face and a bigger skull, bigger features. That's their official findings. And I believe it, because it doesn't take a professor to see the difference. If you really look at the pictures, you'll see what I'm talking about. Little round moon face Paul to long face FAUL.
That one I've got on the screen there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and there's a picture of the actual lady there.
Yes.
There she is. And
I have no reason to doubt their findings. I mean, it's absolutely, they would have no reason to my knowledge, to commit a fraud or perpetrate a fraud. For what? For what reason? They were setting out, just like Dr. Henry Truby, they wanted to prove once and for all that this was nonsense, and they wanted to put the whole thing to rest. And unfortunately for them, or fortunately, however you look at it, they discovered these discrepancies that could not be denied, nor could they be hidden. Now, another interesting thing, Kev, when this story broke, which it came out in this publication called Wired on September 15, 2009, Paul decides that he's going to be a guest on the David Letterman show that night. Now, I don't think he just decided. I think this was damage control to get him on Letterman's show, and they were going to do a little rooftop concert and get the people all fired up for that. And then he gets on Letterman's show, which I think I sent you that clip as well. He gets on Letterman's show, and Letterman starts asking these softball questions about this thing. And man, he just says, "Oh, it was a hot day, and I just decided," he's talking about the Abbey Road photo shoot on the cover of Abbey Road, where he's dressed up as the corpse and he's walking out of step and barefoot and all that. He says, "Oh, it was 100-degree day, and I showed up for the shoot in flip-flops, and it was so hot, I just decided to take them off." Now think about this. 100-degree day. Can you imagine how hot that street must have been? And he's going to take his flip-flops off to walk in his bare feet across that hot pavement on a 100-degree day, just because it was so hot and he had to take the flip-flops off. The only thing that would have protected the bottom of his feet on this hot day. So just the way he described the whole thing, it just, I looked at it and I just shook my head. And Letterman, put a little joke in at the end about, is it really him or something? And then FAUL stops and puts his finger up to his mouth like this and almost winking his eye. So what I get out of this, and certainly I was telling my wife this earlier, I think that Billy Shears is so clever, and he's obviously a brilliant man and very educated and an expert in disguise and deception. And I think that he thinks that he's always the smartest guy in the room. And so he can do something in plain sight, which is lesser magic, and yet still have the audience in the palm of his hand. And he can look at you and make a little gesture and wink his eye and knows that he's still got you. It is a total arrogance, really. I guess that's the best word for it. He's totally arrogant in the sense that he feels that he has that level of control over the populace, and really in a lot of instances he does. And it's just astounding. It really is. You just shake your head. But let me mention Dr. Truby's results as well. So it was Life magazine who, in their search for answers, decided to consult, and this was in 1969, consult Professor. This was a professor from Miami, the University of Miami, Dr. Henry Truby, and he was a leading authority on the voice prints. And he had the ability to prove through voice print, much in the way how investigators could prove certain crimes or whatever through fingerprint. And according to Dr. Truby, no two voices in the world are exactly the same. And through the use of ultrasound techniques, Dr. Truby was able to measure the unique characteristics of a voice and thus create unique profiles for and of each voice. And Dr. Truby created 2 voice prints and compared them to see if they would match. One print was of the real Paul McCartney, who sang Yesterday in 1965. And the other print was FAUL singing Hey Jude in 1968. And according to the myth, and that's the story I'm reading here, according to the myth, the Paul who sang Yesterday was the real Paul, and the Paul who sang Hey Jude allegedly was his replacement, Billy Shears. These were the conclusions of Dr. Truby. So again, he is stating that 2 different songs, Yesterday, 1965, and Hey Jude, 1968, were sang by 2 different voices.
Now, Bill,
So
when did he do this analysis? Do you know?
he said that it says here that he did the analysis in 1969. So this is when Life magazine did a big article, because this really got big, Kev. In 69, this became a big story. And Life magazine went and tracked FAUL down. So they were going everywhere to try and get to the bottom of this. And they first went to this Dr. Truby at the University of Miami, and his conclusions were that it was not the same Paul singing 1965's Yesterday as opposed to the 1968 song Hey Jude. They were 2 different people singing that. So Life magazine goes from there.
Here's a dude, that's like his professional kind of reputation and his credibility.
Yeah.
I mean, why do that? Why even bother doing it, and for something that we're told is so outlandish,
Exactly. Who would put their reputations on the line if they didn't strongly feel that what they were saying were true? There'd be no reason to vilify themselves and put themselves on the line for what?
And that was a different world back then. You didn't get internet clout. You don't do it for likes. For likes and clicks and that dopamine hit,
there was no internet.
Yeah,
they didn't have anything like that.
Different
there were
world,
no cell phones, no internet. So let that sink into the people watching right now. There wasn't anything of the sort back then. So it was a whole different world, a whole different mindset and philosophy. These people certainly would not present these claims if they didn't feel they were valid and true.
No, I absolutely agree with you there. I think this, along with the forensic kind of analysis of the faces. I'm a big science guy, and there's 2 things there that I'm taking for face value. I mean, I'm not there, I wasn't doing the research, but I've got no reason to believe why these experts would be lying to us. But, if this is true, and it certainly seems to be, then there's 2 real big scientific facts that really need discussing. We've got his voice, different voice. You know, and we've got the fingerprints, they're not matching, and
Yeah.
even the DNA case.
Yeah. How do you explain that? There's no way to explain that. And that woman was devastated. And she went on to say that, you know, again, she swore that she had never been with another man. And Paul was the only man she had been with at the time. So there's no way that she could have been impregnated by anybody else because she wasn't with anybody else. So that had to be
I get it.
devastating for that woman.
People can easily say, well, you know, she says that she wasn't with anyone else. Well, fair enough, but that doesn't change Paul McCartney's fingerprints when he went to Japan.
Yeah. Yes.
You know?
Again, just think about that. I mean, according to what Billy Shears wrote, and here's another thing, Kev, that is very, very, this, in my opinion, goes right along with the strongest evidence supporting this, the forensic evidence, along with what I'm about to say. If you didn't introduce anything else as evidence, these things alone would go a long way and have merit, and you'd have pause and say, wait a minute now. So Billy Shears, William Campbell Shepard, the man who claims to be FAUL, the replacement of the real Paul McCartney, he's written several books, but two in particular I have read, Billy's Back and Memoirs. And those books, Kev has the notes right there, and he may have the cover. If not, I can go get the books and hold the thing up. On each of the covers, it says it's by this pen name Thomas E. Harriet, which was on the drum kit on the Sgt. Pepper thing. These books were published by Pepper's Press, which are in conjunction and subsidiary of Maca Corp. Okay? For those of you who don't know this, Maca Corporation, that is the official corporation of Paul McCartney. That's his corporation. So you're telling me, now think about this. So if somebody's going around impersonating Bill Bean and they say they're me and they've written these books and, you know, they're making all these claims and saying this, I would file suit against them right away. I would find that person and file suit against them. I'd sue them for everything that they were worth. Yet, if Paul is still alive and all of this is rubbish, it's preposterous, and yet you have this guy running around making these claims, and not only making the claims, writing the books, but having the books published through Paul McCartney's company, Maca Corp. If you were doing that, doesn't that seem a bit odd, and B, wouldn't the real Paul, if he were still alive, wouldn't he just absolutely hit the ceiling and be doing everything to stop this and make every interview and say this guy is a crazy man and he's out to destroy me? And I mean, wouldn't you think,
Well,
Kev?
you had somebody impersonating you recently on Facebook. This would be like you coming on to my show and saying, hey, everyone, I want you to follow that fake Bill Bean guy out there. I've got a link to his profile. Yeah. He's pretending to be me, and like, I don't know what his intentions are. Can't be good, though, if he's impersonating me. But what I want to do for this character is I want to like, tell my audience about him. I'm going to share him with my audience. It doesn't make sense.
It makes zero sense. And then another clip that I sent to you, and this is another very telling thing, and my wife just reminded me of this. The clip that FAUL is at the Concert for George, and this was the 1 year anniversary of the death of George Harrison. Okay, so Olivia, George's wife, and his son Danny, they put this concert together, and Eric Clapton is the musical director of the concert, and Ringo was there, and FAUL was there. So this scene, and I sent you this clip, you got it right there.
Yep.
Yeah. So they're all standing there, and Heather Mills is with him at the time. And so Danny comes up to him first and, you know, gives him a hug and all that. And then Olivia approaches him and says, hello, Billy. Can you play that clip, Kev?
I can. Here we go, folks. Take a listen to this.
What's it like to do what? It's lovely. Look, excuse me, I've got to say hello to my friends.
Hello.
You all right?
Now I'll just put that back there so you can hear it. And I'll slow it down just in case people missed it. We can do all that fancy stuff here on YouTube. Here we go. He doesn't even flinch.
Oh, hi. Hi. If somebody said
that to me, I'd been like, Billy who?
Right. You'd be stunned. You go, huh? That's not my name.
I mean, there's a bit of a laugh and a joke we have on this channel. I ended up on one of the shows I love is Clyde Lewis. I take a lot of pointers from him. He's been in this game for decades, right? And I've been lucky enough to be on his show 3 times or so. Not that I'm counting. Obviously I am. But one time he introduced me not once but twice as Dave Baker. And I must admit, Bill, I was kind of sitting here. We weren't on cam. I'm thinking, who's Dave Baker? And we have a laugh and a joke about that now, right? But my point being, if somebody came up to me and said, oh, Dave, I've been listening to your podcast for ages, I would think, well, you haven't been listening to my podcast that much if you think I'm called Dave.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
It puts you off because it's foreign. So if you're standing there where he's standing and you approach her in that way and she says to you, hello, Dave, you're going to be taken aback because that's foreign to you now. And you're like, who's Dave? What? You're not going to receive her in the way that he did. It was so easy and comfortable for him when she's saying, hello, Billy. Now, this is one of the most famous people on planet Earth, Paul McCartney and FAUL playing the part. And so you're telling me that she all of a sudden didn't know his name? He was in the band with her husband. They're like the most famous band ever. And she suddenly forgot his name and called him Billy. No. And then there's a clip that I didn't send you. I should have sent to you. He did this movie back in the 80s. I think it was, I want to say 1982 or somewhere around there. It was called Give My Regards to Broad Street. And in that movie, there's a scene where he comes into the room and these 2 doctors or professors or whatever are in the room. And the one says, William, and shakes his hand. And I'm going, now I know that's a movie, but here we go. Another example is Olivia calling him Billy. So you got in the movie saying, hello, William. And there's another clip, a Beatle clip, when they got together for the anthology thing after John Lennon had passed, and they, I guess it was in the 80s, I want to say, probably late 80s, they got together for this anthology thing. And in the clip, FAUL comes into the room, and George, he comes up, and George says, hello, William, and they hug.
You could not make this stuff up.
No.
It goes beyond. You see, this is why I started the show or started this segment by saying there's far too many data points. There's an abundance of information out there that you can make. It's sometimes circumstantial, but again, we've also offered you scientific evidence. So we're dealing with somebody completely different here, Bill.
I am firmly convinced of it. I truly am.
The more I hear about it, the more I do shows on it, and this is maybe done it with Ben, looked at it another time when I had Mark Devlin on.
He'd be a good one to talk with about it, yeah.
He is so knowledgeable in this stuff, and he's a DJ in the UK music scene who tells you that the whole acid house thing that many people my age will remember, absolutely contrived and used to steer people in a direction. It's a guy in the music industry, you know. And I remember listening to it with him, hearing you going over it tonight. I've had the pleasure of looking at the notes and the links you've given me, and it doesn't take away anything from it. It just keeps on building a very strong case.
And furthermore, Kev, on a lot of his album covers, the Paul or FAUL, he has the same deal. Like if you put a mirror up to the album cover, now it's CD covers, it will give you a message. And some of them, it says Bill. You could, somehow he's got it here to where it's not saying Paul, and you look at it a certain way with the mirror, it's saying Bill.
Again, it could be confirmation bias, but for me, I'm looking at magic. at work.
It absolutely is
Yeah.
magic. So he's a master magician, and like his whomever, whatever he is, if he was an uncle to him or just a handler from an early age, whatever it may be, he held Aleister Crowley in reverence, and I do believe that he learned a lot of magic and deception from Crowley. I really believe it.
And Bill, there's a lot of the kind of backmasking as well, isn't there? There's a lot of stuff hidden
Yeah,
in the music. I mean, there's some
absolutely.
examples of that as well. I think
Well,
Let It Be seems to be one that people say that you can hear them actually saying Paul is dead on it.
yeah, and then Strawberry Fields. At the end of that, it's going out, and you hear like this almost. I don't know if they slowed it down to drag out the voice of John Lennon, but it sounds like he says, "I buried Paul," and John Lennon himself comes back and says, "No, no, no, I was saying cranberry sauce." And why? Why were you saying cranberry sauce as the record is going out and slowed down? But so again, I urge people to listen to some of these songs and punch up some of the lyrics as well, because Billy Shears goes into great detail about the meanings of these songs. And they very much, and when you read them, and I have, boy, oh boy, it is a story. It is a long narrative that a lot of the songs post Paul and bringing in FAUL are talking about Paul's death and how Billy is there now, and just very, very eye-opening, to say the least. And if you take the time to do the research like I have and others have, man, you're going to say, something is deaf. There's some, either the real Paul really died and this imposter took over, or this has been a gigantic mind op, and the real Paul is still alive and carrying out this mind op to this very day. It can only be one or the other. And
You
make
know,
no mistake.
I can keep my mind open to that because of one thing you've told us today, and that is that the Maca Corps, that they are the ones that publish the whole kind of the conspiratorial line on this. So there is a way that I'm very open to looking at it at that as well. But then it begs the question as to why.
Why?
You know, and again, that doesn't change the appearance of the face. It doesn't change that
The
kind of
height.
wholesome, four clean-cut boys turning into I am the walrus and
Yeah.
you know, all that kind of good stuff that went on as well.
And
There's something
supposedly the
there.
Walrus song was about when with Paul being decapitated and his body blew up, and they said he looked like a walrus, and so that's where the song "Fool on the Hill" is about Paul being buried somewhere near a hillside. They say in France. Um, Billy Shears goes on and on in the books describing all of these things. And man, I'll tell you again, as I was reading and went, so he's mentioning the songs, and he did list some lyrics of some, but then I went and did my own research of the lyrics, and I'm looking and I'm saying, wow, I'm comparing this. And I said, I understand why he's saying this, because this is fitting a narrative. And another thing that was really, I didn't send you this clip, but I should have sent it to you. This was after the breakup of FAUL and Heather Mills. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, that Heather, she was terrible, and maybe she was. But I believe her when she said this. She started giving interviews saying that her life was in danger. And if something were to happen to her, she's already turned over evidence to a certain person that would release that evidence to the world in response to her death. I looked at her. I'm very good at studying body language, and I believed everything that she was saying, and I certainly believed that she felt that her life was in danger, which it probably was.
Let's look at what happened and been over here in the UK. we've got a ringside seat to all of this, and you know, you seen the media really savaging her, right? And Paul
Yeah,
McCartney's a national treasure. He's
yeah,
Sir Paul,
yeah.
right?
She's
But
a harlot. She's a gold
you know,
digger. She's a this. She's a that.
if we're just open your mind to what me and Bill are saying here, and if he is this agent of change and an agent of the elites, then there's somebody that needs to be protected. And what do we know about the media? That they always protect their puppets as well. They're even further
Yeah,
down the pecking order, and they
they
would
sure
go out
are.
and do everything they could to demonize somebody that might have an important message. Now, I'm not saying that proves that that's what happened with Heather Mills, but I tell you what, when I look back now with hindsight, it was a vicious taking down of her, and it does make you wonder why then.
Yeah.
Why? You
Well,
know, surely these newspapers that peddle in tabloid rumours and just crap, you know, surely they would want the dirt that Heather Mills had, but no, they attacked her instead.
well, this is
Very
what she said,
curious.
Kev. She said that she had information that she had come upon a discovery of information that would shock the entire world. And she's saying that it had nothing to do with infidelity, nothing that Paul did to her in that way. But she has information that in the event of her death would be released to the world that would be so earth shattering that it would have a great effect on the populace. Now, think about what she's saying there. What could it possibly be? She said that it wasn't infidelity or anything like that. So, what information would it be that would hold that type of weight and magnitude that it would have an effect on the masses? There's only one thing that it could be.
Exactly. In this day and age, you know, maybe if we'd gone back 30 years or something, people could say, oh, maybe it's his sexuality. Well, that ship sailed now. The media aren't
Yeah,
going to go after somebody for that. So it's not
they
that.
wouldn't have cared.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's not that. So I wonder.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what else that makes me wonder, Bill? And again, Speculation Island, I'm calling you from now. John Lennon. Now, obviously, the other band members, they must have known. You know, that they would have known that the
Of
old
course, they
Paul.
knew not only the other band members, but again, I made mention of the Who. They wrote that song "Don't Get Fooled Again" or "Won't Get." That was
Well,
about Paul Donovan.
and if we look
Um,
at John Lennon, though, Bill, I mean, it
yeah,
always kind of really puzzled me, you know, the FBI, you know, keeping files on John Lennon, watching his every move, doing this, doing that. And
because they were agents,
there's
Kev.
another
They
way
were
of looking
agents
at
of
it.
an
Yeah,
agency
there's another way
that
of
went
looking
rogue.
at it. You know, if he was at one point and he has in knowledge of what we're talking about here, then you bet your bottom dollar they'd be keeping tabs on him to make sure that.
Especially if you went rogue. And
Yep,
furthermore, I think that Yoko Ono, and again, I can't prove it in a court of law. This is my opinion. I think she was his handler. I think she was an agent too, and someone that is very well versed in occult, witchcraft, hypnotic practices. And she had total control over John Lennon, and I think she was his handler that was assigned to him.
absolutely. No, I can definitely Yoko Ono. It's been well talked about the influence that she had on him, and I can definitely go with that. Absolutely, I do
So,
think
what
that
I
they were.
think, Kev, what
On you
I
go.
really think, again, without being able to prove it, I think perhaps maybe Lennon was getting ready to talk about this. And he even wrote a song in the 70s, How Do You Sleep? And he says, those freaks was right when they said you was dead. How do you sleep at night? The song was to fall. And George also wrote, and Ringo too, Back Off Boogaloo. That was his response to Fall. He's saying, you think you're the greatest of all and all this, back off Boogaloo. So they wrote songs against Fall over the years, but I really believe that maybe John Lennon was getting ready to spill the beans about all of this in 1980. And this is where Mark David Chapman and perhaps another assassin come into this. And I always found it interesting, Kevin. I've read many books on this subject. I've always found it interesting that at the time, because supposedly John and Yoko were coming out of the Dakota, Rosemary's Baby, Roman Polanski, satanic film made. Yeah, that's where John Lennon lived at, the Dakota. And I've been to that place, and it is a wicked place. So John and Yoko come out of the Dakota. They are headed to the recording studio. And as John is coming out, all of a sudden, this Mark David Chapman supposedly, and he was out there waiting for a while. And furthermore, it said that Lennon had seen him earlier in the day and actually signed an album for him, had a brief conversation and signed an album for him. And he waited out there that whole time. So I want people to get this picture in their minds for a second. How is it that John and Yoko come out of the Dakota? I'm sure there was a doorman right there. And somehow they're coming out, they're going to the limo that's going to take them to the recording studio. And yet this Mark David Chapman, undetected, slips behind and shoots Lennon in the back all these times. Okay, where's Yoko? Where's the doorman? Where's anybody that would have, where's the driver of the vehicle? Nobody's around all of a sudden. And this guy has free reign to fire all these shots in the back of John Lennon, and nobody responded in any way, shape, or form. I have never seen anything written that places Yoko right there with him. So where did she go? Did they come out and she just goes back inside and the doorman goes in with her? What happened there? Something nefarious obviously happened with his murder, but there's something more to that, because where are the people that should be there? They're suddenly not there, and this guy's able to come from behind and shoot him in the back all these times.
Yeah, and I'm showing the image there of that building. That building looks so out of place. It is almost like a Mandela effect. Look at it.
Yeah, it's a wicked place, Kev.
Sinister looking. Yeah.
Mike, my first when Mike and I first became friends, I visited him up in New York years ago, and he took me to that place, and I'm telling you, that is an evil, wicked place.
And John Lennon, from your notes, he said maybe only 100 people in the entire world have any idea what the Beatles songs were all about.
Yeah,
I want people to really, I want you to really think about that, folks. John Lennon, you know, part of the Beatles, some of the most listened to music and lyrics in the world. And he says only 100 people at the most know exactly what was going on with the Beatles and their lyrics. That there, it's got to give you pause to think, right?
It gives me pause, that's for sure. And
not,
again,
not Paul, not Paul, but pause.
Yeah, not Paul, but pause. And you know, you think about that and you say, okay, people like you and I would think about that, and it would be confirmation to us that this is way down the rabbit hole, and it is far more than just four lovable mop top lads from Liverpool that came together. And furthermore, and we can wrap it up with this, there's some things that FAUL can hide. The height difference, the facial and cranial structure differences, the ears also. FAUL has detached earlobes. Paul didn't. Paul had dark brown eyes, and FAUL has green eyes. Paul had dark hair, almost black. FAUL has lighter hair. These things you can't hide. And another thing that you can't hide, that he can't hide, is the Scottish accent. And another thing, Paul was a city dweller. He loved the city. He was a city boy, loved the nightlife.
Yeah, hang on a minute. Why did Paul McCartney ever sing a song about Mulligan Tyre? Mulligan Tyre's only ever something. Only people in Scotland know about Mulligan Tyre.
Right.
What was some dafty from Liverpool? Why didn't he sing about somewhere near Liverpool?
Correct.
Why come up to Mulligan Tyre? I mean, is there something in that? I mean, can we find a tie between Billy Shears and the Mulligan Tyre? If we can.
I wouldn't doubt it.
If we can, I think that's the ribbon.
You know, if he goes back to the William Wallace, you know, maybe there's one of those clans that are in between that, you know, are at this place. I don't know, but I'll bet you there's some kind of link.
I'll tell you what's weird as well, or what I've always thought has been weird, even away from the whole Paul FAUL thing, right? The way that Paul McCartney is almost like this, like I described him, a national treasure.
Yeah.
Ringo Starr? Not so much. Ringo got papped off to do the voices for Thomas the Tank Engine and pretty much lived in obscurity. Whereas Sir Paul McCartney, he's Sir Paul McCartney, isn't he? He's like the man.
Probably the most successful entertainer in the history of the entertainment music industry, bar none.
Yeah.
And that even goes for Elvis, who was the most significant entertainer of all time. But as far as longevity and success, Paul McCartney, FAUL, they have surpassed Elvis in that.
Well, Mr. Bean, I tell you what, I enjoy our cold case files. I really do. And I tell you, at one point tonight, I was getting creeped out because we had 322 viewers on the stream.
No.
We've got
Yeah, the
325 right now.
celebrates.
We've got 325 right now. But Bill, every week this is growing, and that's so important to both me and Bill
Yeah.
because we do it for you out there, you know, and we could come and we could, like we do once a month, me interrogate Bill about going to houses and exorcisms. But I like the fact we're getting to see an entirely new side of Bill as well. It's stuff that I like to dive into with Bill. And I can tell from the way the show's growing, and I hate even to call it a show, it's just a conversation between two
Yeah.
real people.
Yeah.
We don't tell you what to think, but we certainly point you in the right direction of, you know, things to think about. And
Praise God for that.
I can only see this getting better and better every week. And I look forward to the cold cases that we blow the cobwebs off in the future.
We got more coming. We're going to have to review David McGowan's book.
Oh, my
there,
goodness.
Adventures of Laurel Canyon. So I'm going to go to work on a file for that, and
Bill,
we'll prepare that.
Bill, you don't... you have no idea the can of worms that you've opened for me here, right? Because we've been going for 2 hours, and it's flown by in a heartbeat, right?
Sure
and
has.
2 a.m. in the morning, probably think a bit late for Kev to be phoning his mum and things. No, she's sitting glued to this, right? And I know as soon as I get off of
We
here,
love you, Pearl.
yeah, you're going to get back to your family. You're going to have a lovely Sunday there, Bill. I'm going to get interrogated. I know I am, because she's going to be full of questions. You know, she's open-minded. I wonder if we've, you know, managed to convince her that there's something more to this. But I hope we've given...
shall see, right?
Yeah, I hope we've given everyone out there something to think about. Now, this is no new story. It's been on the go for, well, what, 1969 you said, Bill? You know,
Well, 66 is when it supposedly happened, and then it was, they started talking about it in 69. So
for a long
quite a
time, this
while
has been
now.
on the go. A lot of books out there. Some people will love it. They'll be entirely convinced already, as many are. Some people will entirely hate the idea. Won't be for them. Didn't happen. That's okay, folks. We provide.
Yeah, hey, look,
you
we
decide.
love you just the same.
Yeah.
And I want people to think about this too, Kev. And some might say, well, why are they going back to these old topics? That happened so many years ago. Here's what I want you to understand. A, these things were implemented way, way back and now has an effect on us currently in our current state of affairs in our lives. B, throughout the history of time, there have been deceivers, and these great deceptions have taken place. They happened then, and they are happening now. So if you can, again, go back and see what types of deceptions were perpetrated then, it will give you a better understanding of the deceptions that are being perpetrated here and now. It's very important. It goes back to knowledge is power.
Ah, well, I know it's been a good show, because my mum is now convinced that there's something to this. Yeah, exactly. And I must admit, she had,
God bless
she had
her.
that face on when she said to me, Paul McCartney, you know that face where, oh, come on, that's too much. But like I said to her, and like I hope everyone appreciates now, go and take your own look at this. There is an abundance of information out there. I mean, Bill haven't even covered half of it.
Oh, no way.
I never believe anything that me and Bill tell you anyway. And especially even when I'm showing you websites and things. Go and check for yourself, because this is a journey that we're all on individually. Yes, we can come together and work together like we do here. And I do think we've got the best chat on YouTube. And I truly mean that. But
I agree.
it's about you on your personal journey as well. And always check. Doesn't matter if it's Alex Jones, if it's Kev Baker, Clyde Lewis, whoever you listen to, Bill Bean, doesn't matter. Check everything and make your own mind up. Never find yourself, you know, just going along with the ideas of others without really checking for yourself. And that's to people that I know really love this show and they trust me. I know they do, but even if as much as you trust me, always check. And it doesn't
I'm
matter if
with you
me
in
and
100% agreement, Kev.
yeah, it doesn't matter if me and Bill are 100% right or 100% wrong, because in the end of the day, that's about you and your journey and the journey that you're on. And what fits for you, it fits for you. And me and Bill, we've got no problem with that either way, don't we, brother?
No problem whatsoever. And it's just, again, we praise God for having us to be together and to be able to. I pray every time before every show that God will work through us to be a blessing to everyone that is tuning in. And I certainly hope that it will always be that way. And boy, I'm looking forward to us getting to the
Laurel
best part of
Canyon.
this whole thing. Oh yeah, boy, that's going to
Laurel
be.
Canyon next week, Bill. Do you think will we
Yeah,
take a?
I can have a file together on that
I can
very
I can even
quickly.
put some stuff together on that. I've done a couple of shows, and Dave McGowan, rest his
Yeah.
soul.
I
Obviously,
never met the man, but I would have liked to have met him because
yeah.
he was a quality individual, and I certainly agree with a lot of what he presented in that book.
Anytime I mention that topic, I always try to mention his name, because if it wasn't for him, I mean, maybe sure the information could have came out, people could have put it together, but he's the one that a lot of us fall back on, the information that's been taken, regurgitated. Many people give him credit, many don't. But I think it's always important to give credit to those who have gone and done the work, and put the dots out there and connected them and put it into a nice book or whatever that we can all
And
then take and
he
share.
surely did, Kev. He did.
Yeah.
I mean, that man, you could see, as a avid reader, you could see when somebody's really put some work into something, and that guy definitely did. And he connected a lot of dots, and I think it cost him his life. I can't prove that either, but he died less than a year after that book being published. And
I've been reading a book, Tyson Fury, the world champion
oh,
boxer,
okay, yeah,
and his
the
battle.
Gypsy Boy.
Yeah, his battle against mental health,
Hmm.
and British people as well. The gypsies and things. They don't have an easy go of it. They're kind of a minority group at times.
Mhm.
Not very proud of the way we treat people when they're different, but that's another show altogether. But
Yeah.
that book is very, very good. And here's a guy that's the hardest man on the planet, but he's big enough to open his heart up and talk to people about the battles he's had. And you know who he thanks first and foremost for the fact he's even still on the face of the earth today, let alone winning world championships? He thanks God.
I was just going to say, I hope it's God, because I heard that he is a man of faith, and
He
good for him.
openly
Praise God.
every time in a ring, Bill, it's the first person he thanks. It's
Good
the
for
first
him.
person he gives credit to for him winning and for him even being here. And he talks to Joe Rogan. You can probably see it, but he talked about how he got that low that he's basically driving towards a bridge, 100 mile an hour over that, ready just to end it all. World at his feet, all the money, everything you
Yeah.
could hope for, but just something missing, something wrong inside, and he puts it down to a voice from God, and that intervened, and from there
Praise God.
he's made it back to where he is now. And to read that book, if you're ever looking for somebody to take inspiration from, and maybe to show you that other people have gone through what maybe you're going through, I would recommend that one very, very highly indeed. He doesn't instantly hit you as being like a stereotype, right? He's a flawed man. He likes his drugs. He's done his drink, but he
Yeah.
admits the mistakes he's made, and
We all have.
he's reconnected, as many people are reconnecting right now, and that's why the best way to finish this show is to let you pray against some of the stuff out there and to help people.
The perfect segue as usual.
You see, George Norrie better watch himself. I'm coming for your job, George. I'm not really,
I agree.
I'm not really,
And
but I'll give
I
it to you,
recently
Bill.
heard from Tommy D, and they I don't know when it's going to happen, because of the travel thing, but I guess if and when this gets resolved, we'll be seeing our friend George Norrie again, and we'll be doing some work with him in the future.
Awesome, Bill. I love it when you're on coast to coast. But
Well, this is the TV show, so this will be
and
yeah,
Beyond, is it?
yeah, beyond belief. So
Yeah.
we'll see if that materializes. We just everything is so uncertain with travel right now, but
Look at
it could
you,
be
eh?
happening
Look
in the
at
future.
you, man. Look at you. Eh?
Well,
You've been on this, what, 11 weeks you've been doing this show, and now you're on Ghost Nation. You're going to sit down with George Norrie. I'm telling you, Bill, it's all taking
that'll be
off for
my
you, man.
second time with George
Yep.
Norrie. I was on with him. I don't know, Kev. Probably I had to put my glasses on for a second because my screen has hurt my eyes. I was on with him on his TV show. I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I actually did two TV shows with him back then. And so it would be great anytime I could be on with him, whether it's Coast to Coast or his TV show. Fantastic. So it looks like it'll come to pass here in the future, and hopefully in the near future.
No, I hope you get that on, Bill. I really do. So I'll let you say a prayer before we go today, Bill, and
All right.
I'll hand it over to you, brother.
And that's everybody. And I want to thank all of you for hanging with Kev and I for longer than usual. And I hope that you got something out of this. And now I really pray that you get something out of what we're about to do. I want all of you to just take a deep breath in and relax. And just let yourselves go. Just whatever may be happening. If it's something from the past or something that's currently taking place in your life, just relax yourself. And I'm going to pray. And while I'm praying, I want you to present whatever it is before God. We're going to ask God to purge this out of your life right now. Father, thank you and praise you again for this blessed and appointed time. And I ask that you bless everyone out there that's watching this show and partaking in the show right now. I ask that you bless them with whatever it is they may be needing. And furthermore, Father, I ask that you take all evil and negativity away from those that may be suffering from those types of torments and afflictions. And Father, I pray that they will also reconnect and renew their everlasting covenant with you here and now. I pray that some will get on their knees and repent all their sins before you and ask for forgiveness. I pray that they'll come back to you and make you first and keep you first. I pray that they'll renounce Satan and all of his demons and all of his works. And I pray that they will allow you to guide them in their life and to have your son, Yeshua Jesus the Christ, come into their lives as well and fill them in their hearts and their minds and their spirits. And Father, by your mighty power and your mighty and holy name in Jesus' name, I bind and break the power over Satan and all of his demons, all of his fallen angels, all of his unclean spirits, all of his demonic powers and principalities, all curses, hexes, vexes, spells, charms, fetishes, all witchcraft, sorcery, magic, voodoo, all death, destruction, sickness, pain, torment, incantations, chanting, hoodoo, root works, money and success curses, relationship curses, all ungodly soul ties, all family bloodline curses, all legal rights, all demonic strongholds, anything and everything that the devil has built over anyone out there, and that they are seeking you. By your mighty power, Father Yahweh, in your mighty and holy name, in Yeshua Jesus' name, I declare it all broken off of them. And Father, I ask that you bless them with an abundance of love, peace, joy, good health, and prosperity for life. Bless their coming in and bless their going out, and make their enemies to flee from them in 7 different directions. Father, we give you the praise and the thanks and the glory for everything forevermore. In Jesus' name, it is so. And now I want everybody to take a deep breath in and exhale and really push it out. And I pray that God's giant warrior angels will come and take every single demon and bit of negativity into custody and carry it out and off and away from you and deposit it all back in the pits of hell where it belongs. By the mighty power of Yahweh in his mighty and holy name, in Yeshua Jesus the Christ's name, may it be so.
Ah, brother. Oh, awesome, awesome. And folks, listen, I urge you, check out Bill. You can see him at work in the Ghost Nation episode. It's Ghost Plantation, or sorry, the Fontiflora, is that it?
Yeah.
Some name for a place, but go and watch that. Good show, but most importantly, you get to see Bill at work there. You get to see what Bill does when all of this other stuff isn't going on in the world. And myself and Ann,
if anybody's out there and they're in need,
yep,
don't hesitate. I mean, I'm a busy man, but I'm never too busy to help somebody. So you can visit me on my website, BillJBean.com. You can email me directly from the site. And if I can help you, please don't hesitate to contact me, because it's God working through me, and God does make the impossible possible. So, brother, go ahead. You wrap it up.
No, I've seen a couple of people, first-time listeners today, and that really always pleases me and Bill. And this isn't the first episode. And what we do here is, because I'm currently in limbo land on the big channel here, we do the live stream. And like one of my favorite live streamers, Mr. Metaker, who triggers more algorithms than is known to man, you know, he just unlists it and then he takes the video down and he uploads it to another channel. That's exactly what I do. And I upload it to Bill Bean's channel, his very own channel. And I really am keen. One of these weeks, you know, Bill, we're going to live stream via your channel. You know, we'll make sure that people know about it well in advance. And we'll get people over, because I want people to see more of what you do, learn more about you, get to know you better. And I think the shows we do and all the stuff you've got here on the website certainly do that. And that's Bill Bean on YouTube, and it'll come up. Just search the channel. The picture of Bill is the profile picture. You can see it there. And also, you've got Bill Bean's website. I'll bring that up here.
Thank you, brother.
There we go. And you can head over here. And Bill is one of the most approachable people online that I've come across. You know, I've been really, really blessed, not only with Bill, but the people I have come into contact with. And nothing's random. Nothing's random. It might seem random, but it's not. But all of the people, they're all like Bill. Very, very approachable. And like he said, if you do have a problem, you can contact them through social media, through the website. Heck, you can even get in touch with me and I'll put you where you need to be. Point being, we're here to help you, you know, and if we can do it in any little way, then that's what we're here for. And another great week it really has. Next week we'll be talking about Laurel Canyon.
Yes.
And again, it all fits together. There's a golden thread that does run through the shows. And like Bill says, and I say it all the time, and it really became apparent yesterday doing a show with people live from Australia, and they were talking about the Aboriginal culture and the need for us to get back to more simpler, basic ways. And, you know, looking back to the time of, you know, pre-Beatles, stuff like that, you know, that's a kind of world before all of this madness started to get going, right? And you have to look back. You have to look back, A, to learn, and B, to kind of make sure you don't repeat the same mistakes again. Correct. And maybe it won't be so easy next time, although with technology now, you wouldn't even need a FAUL. All you would need is a deep fake. You know, maybe FAUL was the last time that we were able to tell the difference when they do pull off one of these absolutely astonishing, magical tricks, albeit the most absurd thing you might have ever heard of. They do it. They can do it. They have done it. And they'll continue to do it. But if we look back and learn,
brother.
Yeah, if we look back and learn, hopefully they won't get away with it next time. We won't get fooled again. So then, I hope that we've done our part. We can work it out if we talk about this a little bit more. And I will leave you to twist and shout all night long. I'll be back tomorrow with Charlie Robinson. You people all rock. Good night. God bless. And we'll see you again, same time, same place, next week. Bill Bean, me, Warrior Mode, and of course, all of you.